Welcome back, Focus Learners. Today, we are diving into an absolute masterclass on human relations. We're talking about a book that has literally shaped leaders, business icons, and, well, everyday people for decades. I'm talking about Dale Carnegie's timeless classic, How to Win Friends and Influence People. We're going to distill this massive, monumental work down into 5 key, super actionable lessons for you.
But before we get to the list, let me ask you kind of a funny question. Do you bait your fishing hook with what you like or what the fish likes? Now, personally, I am a huge fan of strawberry cheesecake. It's a fantastic dessert. But if I were to go fishing, there's no way I'd bait my hook with a slice of cheesecake, right? Fish prefer worms. It sounds totally obvious. Yet in our daily interactions, we constantly try to bait the hook with our own interests and our own desires. This simple, Socratic question perfectly frames the core psychology of persuasion. If you want to influence others, you absolutely must step outside of your own ego and speak in terms of what they want.
Okay, so here's our game plan for today. We're going to walk through 5 essential behavioral shifts: genuine interest in others, appreciation instead of criticism, the power of listening, remember and use names, admit mistakes with empathy, and then we'll wrap it all up with a summary and the edge. All right, let's jump right into lesson number 1. Genuine interest in others. It's all about shifting the focus away from yourself. Winning friends and building real, lasting influence doesn't start with some slick sales pitch or clever manipulation, It starts with true sincerity. You really have to prioritize the other person's perspective. And people have a sixth sense for this. They can inherently feel when you genuinely care about them versus when you're just waiting for your turn to speak. Think about it. Ineffective communication constantly relies on self-centered pronouns like I and my. It's all about what I need, my goals, my problems. But effective communication, it shifts that framing completely to you and your. By simply changing your language and moving that spotlight away from yourself, you immediately begin to build trust. So when you're making a request, craft your language to make it about them and their needs. This brings up a brilliant point, summarized perfectly by Theodore Roosevelt. He said, "The royal road to a person's heart is to talk about the things he or she treasures most." And Roosevelt was actually famous for doing exactly this. Whenever he expected a visitor at the White House, he would literally stay up late the night before, researching whatever subject he knew particularly interested his guest. He understood that putting aside his own wants and focusing intensely on what the other person loved was just the absolute best way to forge a real connection. Moving right along to our second pillar, appreciation instead of criticism. This is all about protecting people's dignity. If we want to handle the inevitable friction of life and business without causing deep-seated resentment, we've got to understand human nature. The psychologist William James hit the nail on the head when he said, "The deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated." Notice that word, craving. It's a fundamental human need. The world-famous psychologist B.F. Skinner actually proved that an animal rewarded for good behavior will learn much faster and retain it longer than one that is punished for bad behavior. And guess what? The exact same applies to us humans. Criticizing someone instantly puts them on the defensive. It bruises their pride. We really need to replace fault-finding with appreciation. But quick warning here, there is a huge difference between cheap flattery, which is just selfish and shallow, and genuine heartfelt appreciation. People can smell fake flattery from a mile away. Now, this is where it gets really practical. When we want to offer constructive feedback, a simple shift in framing using a yes and approach makes all the difference in the world. We so often start with praise and then totally ruin it with the word but. For example, "You did a great job on that report, but you missed the deadline." Ouch, right? That word but instantly triggers defensiveness. It completely invalidates the praise you just gave. Instead, try framing it constructively using the word and, like this. "You did a great job on that report, and if we can get the next one in on time, it's going to be absolutely perfect." Just replacing but with and prevents the other person from feeling attacked while still addressing the core issue. So what if you absolutely do need to correct a mistake? Well, here's a super actionable 3-step procedure you can use, often called the criticism sandwich. Step 1, begin with sincere praise. Step 2, call attention to the mistake indirectly. Step 3, end with positive encouragement. As Carnegie points out, this is literally the psychological equivalent of a dentist using Novocaine before they start drilling. You still have to do the necessary drilling to fix the tooth, sure, but the Novocaine kills the pain and protects their pride in the process. Okay, let's move on to the third takeaway, the power of listening. Basically, how to be an attentive conversationalist.
We often think that having influence means you have to give these amazing, sweeping speeches. But letting others talk is actually a superpower for deepening your relationships. There's this fantastic anecdote from the book where Dale Carnegie attended a dinner party and ended up meeting a botanist. Carnegie found the subject completely fascinating and listened intently for hours as the man spoke, all about exotic plants and indoor gardens. Carnegie barely spoke a single sentence the entire evening. Yet, when the botanist left, he told the host that Carnegie was a most interesting conversationalist. It perfectly proves that the best way to be deemed a great talker is to actually just be an exceptional, attentive listener.
So here is the golden ratio you want to keep in your back pocket. Listening, 75%, talking, 25%. Actually, scratch that. Think of it more like an 80-20 rule if you really want to challenge yourself, but aim for at least 75. In your very next conversation, I want you to fight the urge to fill those awkward silences. Resist the temptation to jump in with your own story the exact second they take a breath. Aim to spend the vast majority of your time actively listening and encouraging them to share. When you do that, you make the other person feel incredibly important.
All right, let's hit section 4, remember and use names. This is how you make them feel truly valued. Acknowledging someone's identity is absolutely crucial for making a strong, lasting first impression. Carnegie says that a person's name is the sweetest and most important sound in any language, and it's true. Calling someone by their name is a very subtle yet incredibly powerful compliment. It shows you care enough to recognize them as an individual. On the flip side, an executive who constantly forgets their employees' names, they're building their business on quicksand. Forgetting a name makes people feel distant, unvalued, and honestly, completely unimportant to you.
Now, we've all done it, right? We make the excuse that we're just too busy or we're naturally bad with names. But honestly, it's really just a lack of focused effort. So here is a highly practical, actionable procedure to fix that right now. Step 1, make a sincere effort the moment you're introduced. Actually listen to the name instead of stressing about what you're going to say next. Step 2, repeat the name in conversation immediately. Say it out loud to lock it into your memory. And step 3, write it down later so you can visualize the spelling in your head. Commit to this simple procedure, and I promise you'll never have to use that "I'm bad with names" excuse ever again.
Which brings us to section 5, admit mistakes with empathy. This is how you disarm conflict fast.
This final core takeaway is all about how owning your errors with real humility earns you immense respect from your peers, your subordinates, and your superiors. Carnegie shares this great personal story about taking his dog for a walk off-leash in the park, which, by the way, was strictly against the law. He spotted a police officer approaching, an officer who had actually warned him about this very thing before. Now, instead of waiting to be scolded or, trying to invent some flimsy excuse, Carnegie enthusiastically ran up and admitted his guilt immediately. By beating the officer to the punch and aggressively taking the blame, he completely deflated the officer's anger. It's a brilliant de-escalation tactic. Carnegie basically said it best right here. Any fool can try to defend his or her mistakes, but it raises one above the herd to admit one's mistakes. Eagerly acknowledging your fault totally shifts the psychological dynamic of the entire interaction. Think about it. It forces the offended party to nourish their own self-esteem, not by scolding you, but by taking the high road and showing you mercy and forgiveness instead. It's a real game changer. All right, bringing it all together with section 6, summary and the edge. Time to transform your human relations. We've covered a ton of highly actionable ground today. When you look at how all these core principles from Dale Carnegie seamlessly synthesize together, you can see how showing genuine interest, offering sincere appreciation, listening actively, remembering names, and admitting mistakes all interconnect into one massive framework. And they all serve one primary function: overcoming our naturally self-centered human egos. When we intentionally step outside of our own wants and validate the importance of others, that's when we build genuine, lasting influence. So, let's lock these 5 pillars in one last time for you to take away. 1. Show genuine interest. 2. Appreciate, don't criticize. 3. Listen at least 75% of the time. 4. Remember names. And 5. Admit mistakes quickly. Taming our own egos to serve and elevate the people around us is the absolute ultimate secret to success in both business and in life. So I'll leave you with this question. Will you let your ego win your very next interaction, or will you step aside to elevate others and master the true art of influence? If you found this whiteboard explainer valuable today, make sure to hit that subscribe button for the Edge Library to get notified of all our upcoming deep dive book summaries. Until next time, keep learning, stay focused, and keep elevating those around you.